Thanks, Sam. Good morning, Los Angeles. I am so excited to be kicking off the dot.LA Summit this morning with the keynote. No pressure, right? But, I am also, frankly, so excited to be wearing pants. This is the first time I've gone on air, and I have not been wearing leggings, so big day for me. But I'm so excited to be joined by two powerhouse executives in the media industry this morning. As Sam mentioned, Sarah Hardin, Liz Jenkins, the CEO and CFO of Hello Sunshine. Ladies, thanks so much for joining me.
Morning, and I'm definitely wearing pants. Liz generally wears pants on our Zooms as well, or a dress. So here we are.
I'm wearing high heels today, in fact, actually, for the first time in, I kid you not, 5 months. But I said this is a special occasion. I'm gonna bring out the big guns. So
I love it. Me too. Yeah, it just gives me a little something extra this morning.
Nice to be here, Kelly.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of time, so let's jump into the protein, as they would say on Succession. Let's start at the mission of Hello Sunshine, to change the narrative around women and underrepresented voices by putting them at the very center of the story. Big Little Lies, Little Fires Everywhere, my personal favorite, The Morning Show. But we're also living in an age where the media industry, you're seeing brands like Disney and these like larger traditional brands having to become tech companies in order to still successfully tell those stories. So let's start there. Hello Sunshine, if you had to put a label on it, what would you say it is? A production company, a media brand, and what role does tech play in playing into that?
Well, and thanks for, yeah, great. Thanks for opening up with that question. Look, I think when we started the company about 4 years ago, I think it was really with a vision and led by Reese of how do we build a media company for the sort of next media age. And as we talked about that, we talked about what we thought was important. One, I think being in conversation directly with your consumers. So we define our company not as a production company, although we're really proud of the production work we do, but as a media brand and a media company with a premium content studio at the center of it. And I do think it reflected a point of view about what it takes in this incredibly crowded media landscape to really stand out. And I also thought I think it reflected at the time, the thought of starting a company in this landscape. Where were we going to have some advantage? And I think, while we were starting Hello Sunshine in this incarnation, it reflected in our growth of Reese's 20-year career as a producer and her ability to bring an audience to things. And that was what we were betting on. Not only were we going to produce premium storytelling, but also if we're going to be good partners, the importance of being able to build a relationship directly with consumers. And so when you look at that, I think for us, there is a set of capabilities that are underpinned by technology as you increasingly build relationships directly with consumers. And I think that's what you see the big media brands have done over many years, over the last 10 years, increasing over the last couple as they build direct to consumer subscription platforms. So that's certainly the direction we're heading in.
Yeah. And, I want to dig into that a little bit deeper because it feels like from everything that you're doing, it's really focusing around curation and really making that edge that differentiates you from competitors. You're bringing communities together. It's not just about telling stories, but it's allowing spaces for people to engage with the themes of those stories. And so one of the things that, simple as Reese's book club does just that. So I'd love, whoever wants to take this question, for you to tell me a little bit about what role that plays in trying to create that engagement in that community in Hello Sunshine.
Well, I'll kick that off and then Liz, I'll turn over to you. I mean, look, I think right from the start, Reese's book club and books sit at the center of the whole company. And I think, again, from the start, I think the conviction that as you build a brand, it's not only about what we create, but there's a curatorial voice for a brand, especially in the early days. And that was just authentically around books. And one of the first things we did literally the way we launched the company was to start picking a book in the first week of every month. Reese had been posting books to Instagram and that sits strategically at the heart of our company. So I think, Reese's book club's grown to be incredibly influential. And we sort of, that has a separate editorial process than how we at books, we look at for film and TV, but if we love a book enough to look for book club, we certainly look at for film and television. And the fact that we can go full circle with a book like Little Fires. I don't know, Reese, Liz, if you want to speak to a little bit to Little Fires, because I think it's a great example.
Oh, I do. You know, it's something that we look at a lot, and I think it really highlights the integrated nature of the company that we've all built together. From, you know, picking that book in 2017 and the journey that we went on with like our audience, over until the show was launched on Hulu in early 2020. And I think the thing that's really incredible, if you think about it, is it allows us to, as a partner to those platforms, deliver not only really great content, but also to deliver some of our audience as well, and have an authentic kind of connection to our audience across the journey from kind of book to screen. You know, whether it was kind of our in-house social video team being on the set the first day, Celeste Ng, the author, got to see, you know, her words really come to life. Really incredible to have captured that. To, you know, Zoe Fairborn, who heads brand partnerships for us, really bringing kind of brands to the table. That vintage Lexus that Reese drove, you know, was courtesy of the car company itself. And so to bring those brands to Hulu as platform partners as well is, I think, all part of kind of the uniquely like integrated company and the power of that we can bring to our partners.
Yeah, absolutely. And that integration piece seems to be becoming more and more important, right? You know, it's to be a successful media company, you can't just be a TV studio, a film studio. You have to be able to reach consumers across every touch point, it feels like, because that's what we've grown to expect, to be able to engage with these characters and these stories in every platform. But I'd love to touch a little bit more on kind of the brand that you're trying to curate with Hello Sunshine. Because of course, when I think about a book club, right, we go back to the OG, Oprah. And when I would walk into a bookstore, you know, I know exactly what Oprah's recommendation is going to give to me. And so kind of starting from that touch point with the consumer, what kind of brand do you want people to think about when they think about Hello Sunshine? When I walk into a bookstore and I know that, you know, okay, this is Reese's pick for Hello Sunshine, what emotion should I have? What should I be expecting? And Liz, do you want to start with this one?
I'll let Sarah take this question. It's a good one. I think she's on mute. Yes.
Technical difficulties here in the work from home last guy. Well, maybe Liz is there.
I
can riff here. Let's go back and forth.
No. I'm happy to take the question. You know, I think what's interesting is obviously, you know, as it relates to our book picks, each of those.
I'm back. Sorry, keep going, Liz. I could not unmute myself, but keep going.
Yeah, each of those is selected by Reese. Sometimes people ask the question, does Reese actually pick the books? And she does, you know, and I think as we think about the extension of both like book club and into our studio businesses, each of the heads of our studio businesses, so Lauren Newsetter, who heads up scripted film and television, to Claire Curley, who heads up kids and animation, they have real sort of creative authorship and ownership of those businesses. At the same time, it's really clear what sort of Hello Sunshine stands for as a brand, right? You know, there's a woman at the center of every story, and that woman is a hero of her own story. She has real agency and authorship. So there's certain themes that you won't see in a Hello Sunshine production, and those that you will. There's always an element of hope, you know, and so I think there are things like that, but we really, each of the executives, all of our team at Hello Sunshine, really, you know, we're all aligned around the same mission and vision, but has real authorship themselves to kind of, to tell stories that are aligned with that mission.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously being a woman, right? I love the message of Hello Sunshine. It's so great to be able to watch stories, especially over the past couple of years, where that's become more prevalent. We're seeing more women at the center of stories, more folks of color, LGBTQ, more underrepresented communities. But I want to touch a little bit on what the Me Too and Time's Up movement has played into those stories, right? I mean, something so painful has borne such change across the media industry, across every industry. But there's also a lot of folks that have said, you know, the Me Too movement, the Time's Up movement has gone too far, and that we're alienating an entire population that needs to be on our side, right? To impact lasting change. And that's one of the things that I think is so great about Hello Sunshine, because you take risks in telling nuanced stories. You know, the morning show comes to mind. You know, you see sexual harassment play out in films like Bombshell. It's very on the nose. But with the morning show, it was very nuanced. And so I'd love for you to talk to me a little bit about how you're able to achieve that, but also, you know, do you feel pressure sometimes with these stories to be a little bit more black and white versus nuance? And how do you put that in there to start a real conversation like you've done with these shows?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that and address that. Look, I think when we started the company, it was prior to this, to Time's Up, and I think the Me Too movement, and but I will tell you, those movements have given us a sense of bravery and fearlessness. Our mission was important when we started. It's never been more important. And I think for us, it's about I think what you're seeing is all a conversation about power. And what you're seeing with the Time's Up and Me Too movements is laying bare the systemic atrocities that have happened, both not only in the prevalence of sexual harassment in the industry, but the subtle and daily exclusion of people of color and other marginalized voices that have happened over decades in Hollywood. And I think, I think when we started the company, it was about how do we paint a path forward, and how do we be part of the solution. And the solution, and also a huge opportunity, because when you exclude those voices from storytelling, and yet they are 50% of the population when it comes to women, or you look at Latinos, like the continued marginalization of Latino voices from media, and they represent 20% and a huge amount of, when you look at the growth in young audiences as well. And so part of it was like, this just does not make sense. And I think that was Reese's mission. And for us, I think the importance and the pressure I think we feel, I certainly feel it, is once you get a chance, and Reese really, the convening person for this company, we have an opportunity and a door to walk through. You have to walk through it at incredibly high quality. You have to walk through it and be excellent. You have to walk through it, and not only for us, it's not about just what we do, but how we do it, and really trying to be part of lifting up intersectional storytellers as we come to marketplace. So there's still so much work to do, and I think for us, if we can, in a foot forward way, demonstrate that this makes business sense, that when you have people who are underrepresented in media and you are part of telling those stories, and I think we are just one of many, many companies committed to that. And, I think it's certainly exciting over the last 3 or 4 years, not only see those stories come out, but to resonate incredibly well with audiences, as we expected.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more with that. You're seeing, not just from Hello Sunshine, right, but Black Panther for Disney, what that did, that was incredibly successful. And it shows, like you say, like this stuff makes business sense. It's sad that it's taken us this long to come to the point where we realize it makes business sense. And I also just appreciate the morning show, Big Little Lies, of how that starts conversations. Even just me and my fiance watching the morning show and talking about sexual harassment in the workplace, it started a dialogue that wouldn't have happened without these stories. And obviously it's not just for women. He really likes it too. So it's resonating with everyone. But I want to talk a little bit more about this point that you brought up around power, right? So the streaming wars has drastically changed how we consume content. It used to be, okay, Thursday night comes along, it's NBC comedy, let's throw on Friends. Millions and millions of people are watching. Now we've got Apple, Hulu, Netflix, you name it, the short-lived Quibi, all places where you can go and consume content. But I think what's really interesting is, unlike a lot of other production companies, other media companies, direct-to-consumer companies, you've not done first look deals with any of them. You're actually going out to Apple, HBO, Hulu, Netflix. You've been on all of them. So what's the strategy there, and what do you get out of that flexibility? Are there specific things that you get from working with specific brands and partners?
I'm happy to kick off this question. Look, I think that one of the interesting things is, as you look at the landscape now, every platform has different needs, right? And one of the things that we do uniquely in the scripted business, if you look at some of these titles like A Little Fires Everywhere, they're really kind of tentpole shows, and I think as you look at the streaming platforms and what are they looking for, what does a hit mean when people aren't convening around the television on Thursday night to watch a show? I think for a lot of platforms or shows that you look at to really attract audiences that are noisy and will stand out in a landscape that has never been more crowded. So I think having the ability, there are not a lot of those sorts of shows on each platform, so I think having the ability to go to different platforms and take those sorts of really brand defining shows is important. But then I think also as well, having something that, the platforms really, it resonates with them. We want something that they're passionate about, right? And so we talk a lot about how they view the show, how they think about marketing the show to their audiences. And it's really about finding kind of the right home for each program. Every single program we do is unique. And thinking about how does it fit in with the rest of the slate that they have. So I think it's great to have that sort of flexibility today.
Yeah, just the only thing I'd add to that is I think Liz is highlighting one of the sort of core ethos of the company when we started that we thought was going to set us apart. And I think while we embraced from the start these sort of multiple swim lanes, we've built, scripted, unscripted, more recently in the last year, kids and animation business on the studio side, a social editorial team, brand partnerships, and Reese's book club. From the start, we said we're going to build an integrated media company. But the way we're going to do this is few things well. And no cynicism. This business is hard. And I think a few things well, it's like if we don't love this and can't bear not to make it, and whether it's a short form series or an unscripted series, and we don't think it has something distinct to add to the cultural conversation, that's not the business we're in. And so in the few things well business, we want to find for whatever we're doing, whether it's a scripted show or a short form series with a brand, we work very selectively with brands that are mission aligned, or it's an unscripted series. It's about finding that partner who cares about it as much as we do and is going to be up for the ride. I mean, look at the ride in the last 12 months, trying to pause productions and work out COVID and come back safely. You just have to be deeply partnered around things that both of you care, and we care deeply about everything we do. And so we try and find that person and that partner on everything we do that cares as much as we do. And because I think without that intention and passion, and it's hard to deliver quality.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And I want to get to the unscripted series that you mentioned. So thank you for bringing that up. But I'm curious, you brought up, Liz, what does even a hit show mean anymore, right? Because we don't have those traditional metrics, the Nielsen ratings, right? Of how many people were around there, how many eyeballs saw the ad that they're placing against your show. So from a CEO and CFO perspective, so Sarah, maybe let's start with you. How do you measure success? How do you say, okay, Big Little Lies was a hit? Is it starting a conversation? Is it certain viewer metrics? I'm curious how you suss that out.
Well, look, I think we're in a streaming world. We have way less, it's pros and cons. You have way less access to data around some of those traditional ratings, other metrics. But look, for us, I think, but there's a lot of proxies to know whether a show is resonating. And so I think for us, we're certainly looking with our partners, the cultural, the social conversation that's happening with the show. And you definitely get an indication from audiences and then from platforms about where things are going. So for us, is it moving the needle for anyone? I will say, I think I think everyone I see consistently, even the way shows are talked about, the real focus on completion rates on streaming shows. We've got to do the job of getting people to tune in and sample that first thing, but you see the shows that get that momentum and have a propulsiveness to them, that you move from one episode to the next. So whether you're, launching shows on a binge model, or whether you're spreading them out, still over many weeks, as some streaming platforms are doing, I think that's ultimately, it's like, can you get audiences to show up, and can you get them to complete a series? Because what completing a series is an indication of that the show matters to you. And I think these are subscription platforms. They are, by and large, some of them are obviously dual, but mostly subscription platforms. And if they're going to attract and retain subscribers, these have got to be shows that not only do you want to watch, but you're going to passionately watch the end of it, and then hopefully get on social and talk about it. And so we're certainly looking and doing the social listening around these, and we get some direct feedback, and you certainly get a sense from audiences, and so I think they're all the ways. Do people care? Do people care about these shows? And there's a lot of different ways to measure that than there certainly were 4 or 5 years ago. I certainly love to see more data, but we can get proxies for that.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree. It's just all about No, I was going to say, I agree with everything Sarah said. I think that there are a lot of ways to measure, but the most important thing for us is not only delivering on the expectations of our platform partners, but really exceeding them. And I think one of the things I love to see are the ways in which we can do that, again, beyond just the content, whether it's our social team engaging around the content and encouraging our audience, to Sarah's point, to binge certain things. And they did a neat campaign around Get Organized with a Home Edit called Roy G Binge, which was a fun kind of play on words there. But I think, again, that to me is, how we can really demonstrate the value that we bring to both the platforms and, again, and content that really delights our audience and galvanizes like that community around certain conversations.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a really smart way to look at it. And it's so interesting to hear about the different metrics right now. It's like completion rates versus Nielsen ratings. I'm curious, do you feel like there's more flexibility and more risk taking that's allowed now because you have so many different places to go? Because, I mean, back in the day, it's ABC, NBC, Fox and whatnot. And you have to have something that appeals to everyone because you're trying to go out and get all of those eyeballs to choose you versus the other couple of options. So I'm curious, do you feel like there's more flexibility now that there's more folks at the table? It's not just 5 or 6 people controlling what goes on, what voices are represented, how consumers engage with them. Or do you feel on the flip side that there may be less risk taking because there's also just so much content out there, not just on these streamers, but on TikTok, on social media and whatnot. And there's all of these new draws for our time when it comes to entertainment.
I think it's an incredibly vibrant buyer landscape. And, there's certainly shifts that you see. I think, I think it's really, I think unscripted's going to, we're really bullish about the unscripted business in the next few years. I think some places who traditionally, did a lot of scripted fare, the costs, the escalation in costs has certainly been one thing on the scripted side, and COVID has only escalated the costs of being in the scripted production business. And even prior to that, I think unscripted, in terms of dollar for dollar spent on the screen can really garner, when you get that right, can garner really good audiences. But look, I think it's a great time to be a content supplier. It's still hard to get a show packages sold. You've got a thread. I mean, look, you've got buyers who are incredibly judicious. They have all the access to knowing what their subscribers and audience wants, and you have to deliver. They're competing. It is a warring marketplace out there. You're not only, competing for a consumer spend, you know, $5, $7, $11, $15 a month, you know, with you, but then keep them and retain them. And it's not hard for consumers to churn in and out of these products either. And so I think that I think it's an incredibly good time. And I think what you're saying, I think you are seeing these platforms have to take bets. And you know, I think in those times, I think we've certainly tried to be very intentional and thoughtful. And Lauren Newstetter runs our scripted business with Reese, like just packaging up projects that we think both based on a best-selling book and or with actors and actresses and screenwriters, and that we just sort of think are what we talk about as being undeniable. And that's what we spend a lot of time doing, and go to try and find that right home. And we've had support, and I think it reflects the fact that you know, that buyers have to deliver if they're going to keep re-earning the eyeballs of subscribers and audiences.
Yeah, I think to just kind of put a button to what Sarah's saying, I think you've got these two competing dynamics that you highlighted. I think on the one hand, you've got this explosion in the amount of content and the number of platforms. And so therein lies a significant amount of opportunity, but at the same time, because of that, it's even harder to cut through, you know? So I think there's the opportunity to take risks, but, you know, obviously you want to get to a second season if it's not a limited series. And how do you do that? In in the noisiest, in the most crowded landscape, not just competing against long form content, to your point. So it's a tough needle to thread in that.
Yeah.
But.
Well, so let's talk a little bit more about what you're doing with Unscripted, because obviously you're known for your scripted content, 18 Emmy nominations, which is insane. You know, congratulations. But you're delving into Unscripted, you're delving into animation. So what's the strategy there, and how is that going to expand the audience that you can reach versus, you know, some of the shows like Big Little Lies and such?
You know, I think a lot of what we'd started with about how do we deliver and double down on our mission. And I think when we talk about everything we do puts a woman at the center of the story. And I think there are certain stories that when we started the company, the vision was if we found and sat with a great creative or an author or a really interesting activist, and we wanted to be able to honor that story. And some stories are best told in scripted or unscripted form, or in a short form series, or in an animated kid series. And I think over the last 4 years, you've just seen us methodically. The choice was to go into scripted first, and then unscripted, and then kids and animation. And I think we're super excited about, I mean, the one thing we've done in the last 12 months is really accelerate our slate. I think we started in unscripted a couple of years ago. We just launched, you know, Get Organized with the Home Edit. We've been working with them since they had 75,000 Instagram followers, and had done a sort of a mid-form series with them, and you know, super proud of that. And I think we've announced My Kind of Country with Apple, which is a, you know, big competition series, and then we have a set of things, announcements coming up. But I think for 2021, a huge focus on that, because there are stories that are just best told, and voices that that we think are best told in unscripted form. And then on the kids and animation side, we haven't made our first announcements yet, but again, we have a really robust slate, because I think changing the narrative for women starts with changing it for girls. And I just think we had a belief that we could, you know, could we find 2 or 3 properties a year, and that, you know, could we add to an already really wonderful slate of of kids and animated programming. So I think that's a, you know, watch this space. It's a huge focus for us as we head into 21. Liz is deep in the middle of, you know, animation, and we're acting as a full studio on the, you know, in terms of physical production on the unscripted and kids and animation side. So that has a set of infrastructure building related to it that Liz is leading. So she looks very fresh, given how hard she's been working the last couple of months. We're in production on a lot of things.
Yeah. No, I mean, I love the point that you said, that changing the narrative for women starts with changing the narrative for girls, as I think that's so important. And I also appreciate that you're taking risks with the different forms of content, and understanding that, you know, like you said, one story deserves to be a long form, but in others, it will shine better in short form. So we're almost running up on time here, but I do want to talk a little bit about this craze around social media, because, you know, like we said, it's not just, okay, let me turn on Netflix, let me turn on Hulu, let me binge the latest Hello Sunshine series, but it's, well, maybe I want something more do it yourself, right? Like, let's go to YouTube, let's go to TikTok. So how do you think about utilizing those platforms, taking these stories and thinking about how you can utilize that social audience and reach a whole nother generation? Because what I think is really interesting is that the generation that's using those platforms the most, where they watch most of their entertainment content, that generation is so passionate about the themes that are at the heart of Hello Sunshine's identity, right? Giving voices to people of color, to women, to the LGBTQ community. So how do you think about using social in order to engage with that new Gen Z generation?
Liz?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think one of the things that I love about how we've approached the business from kind of all the various angles in a really kind of organic fashion, and not just thinking about social media as a tool or an engine for marketing, kind of the main event or the entree, but it's about meeting our audience wherever they are and wherever they're engaging with content. And so, you'll find kind of Hello Sunshine stories on YouTube, on our Instagram channel, in a partnership we did with Audible to podcast, and I think that one of the, our social team did this amazing series this summer called Book Shook, where we sat down with, Reese, Witherspoon, and Jamila Jamil, and Yara Shahidi, and talked about books that had shook them. And it was really powerful. And, I think that, again, it is about reaching our audience wherever they are and telling, and sometimes it is kind of highlighting stories that we're telling on other platforms, but it really is, I think the thing that's unique is that sort of intention in the very genesis of a given project. Like, where's the right home for telling the story? In the same way we talked about longer form projects and thinking about the platform there, it's being as intentional about every single piece of content that we have and all the platforms.
Yeah. No, I think that's so smart, and we're running up on time. I feel like I could talk to you forever about these different things. But, I think that's a really interesting piece around social media, because I think you're right. I think you see so many studios and TV studios using social media as a tool and just kind of repurposing the content of oh, look here, come to Netflix, come watch this. But instead, what you're trying to do is create content that lives best on that platform, and that's going to engage that 10-year-old girl on YouTube or TikTok, and help her change the narrative, change her story, and change the way she sees things. Before we end, I have to ask you a fun question, because I know the answer to this question for myself. But Alex Levy or Bradley Jackson, how would you characterize yourself, Liz?
It's a great question. I mean, I am from the South. So, I feel like actually you should ask, how about Sarah can characterize me and I can characterize her? No,
okay, that's good. I like that.
Team Bradley all the way. I have a cursing habit about as bad as Bradley's as well. So no, team Bradley Jackson all the way.
I love it. Well, listen, ladies, thank you so much for joining me this morning for kicking off the dot.LA Summit, the inaugural dot.LA Summit. I really appreciate the insights that you've shared around building a direct-to-consumer media company, and especially one that highlights stories that people like me can see themselves in. So thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Kelly. I'm excited. I see that my friend Beatrice Acevedo is up next. So happy to keep it rolling, and thank you so much for having us. We are #LongLA, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much, audience, for tuning in. And in my best Bradley Jackson impression, we will be right back with more from the dot.LA Summit after this break.